For exercise 15-55, I pretty much drew the objects and modeled them in whatever orientation was easiest to do at the time. Now that's going to cause me quite a few headaches when I go to put this assembly together. In the end, I want it to look like the picture that's in the book on page 750 for exercise 15-55 with the handle sticking up and the link piece sticking out to the right. So I'm going to need to do a lot of rotation using different UCSs to get this thing to work. So the thing that I need to remember at all times is that the software rotates around the Z. So for this piece here, if I type in the rotate command and I select this piece, I can rotate this on the Z-axis 90 degrees, and that's going to move it into that orientation there. I then need to change the UCS to the front and rotate it again. This time, since I know it's going to go along the Z, I'm just going to move it 90 degrees straight up. So we'll rotate that 90 degrees. Now, what this has done is this has put this in the orientation that I needed to be in for the purposes of this exercise. Now, coincidentally, this is now in the correct orientation, this is in the correct orientation, and this appears to now be in the correct orientation. This is not in the correct orientation, and this is not in the correct orientation. So to rotate this 90 degrees, I want to go to the UCS top. It's important not to be orbiting the screen around and stuff during this time so that you can remember which UCS you want to be in to do these different operations. So by rotating that 90 degrees, that is now very, very close to being in the orientation that I want it to be. In fact, I can go with that as the proper orientation. So the next thing I want to do, I've got this in the proper orientation, I've got this in the proper orientation, we've got this, which is probably going to need to be rotated 90 degrees so that it's coming out to the right. I still need to rotate this so that the hole is facing down, and I need to rotate this. So I'm going to go to the UCS right, and I'm going to rotate this piece 90 degrees. Doesn't matter which 90 degrees I use, as long as I move it 90 degrees. So now I've got this in proper orientation to attach to the bottom hole here. I've got this in the proper orientation to attach in the middle hole, and then I want to rotate this. So I still want to rotate this from the right. I just need to make sure that I'm moving it so that the hole is now straight down. I can't see the hole, but I know that it's straight down. I'm going to change my visual style to 2D wireframe. That way I can kind of see a little bit better what's going on, and it's going to give me a little bit more of an indication of what I need to do. Now I can go back to UCS front and then rotate this again. So we're going to rotate this 90 degrees. Now this is in the proper orientation. Now that's a lot of rotating around, a lot of moving around, but if I would have drawn all of the objects in the right orientation to begin with, I wouldn't have had to mess with any of this information. I could have just simply put the object together and been done with it. So now I need to line everything up, and I don't feel like going through and looking back at all of the dimensions to try to figure out the math. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my color to red, and I'm going to draw lines from all the center points. So we'll do a line from the center point of this circle. It's not letting me select it because dynamic UCS is on right now, and dynamic UCS can be one of those things that's kind of a pain in the neck unless you need it. Dynamic UCS allows you to automatically select things as you go through here. So I'm going to go to, let's see, there's 3D object snap, dynamic input, and I don't see where dynamic UCS was moved to, which is kind of weird. It used to be right down here, and so I could select it, but for now I'm just going to go ahead and start my line command, and I'm going to grab here, and I'm going to come back to right here. So that's one center that I've now got on here. I'm going to draw my line from here back to this one. The easiest way to get around dynamic UCS is not try to pick a back face first. So other places where I'm going to need the center points located, I've got between here and this back face, which dynamic UCS picked up again. So I'll just move away from the object a little bit so that it doesn't pick it up. And then I've got these two holes here. And last but not least, I've got this over here that I'm also going to want to draw that line through. Now what this line is going to allow me to do is just move these objects from line to line without actually having to worry about where they line up. So for example, I want to move this so that it goes through here. So I'm going to move this piece from the midpoint of that line to the midpoint of that line. That's now in the proper location. I can then take all of this and move this, zooming in from the midpoint of this line, zoom back out, and then I'm going to go to the midpoint of this line. So in doing it this way, I can save myself a tremendous amount of time. So now I'm going to move these objects from the midpoint of this line, and this is going to get a little bit tricky to see in the wireframe, but you're just going to have to zoom in so that you can see everything more clearly, to the midpoint of this line. Trust your O-snaps, know that your O-snaps are doing what they're supposed to do. This last one is probably the trickiest, so we're going to go midpoint here, and then zoom really far in. All I want to see is this red line, and I want to grab the midpoint of it. So now I've got this thing mostly assembled, so I can come in here and erase all of my red lines. Now I want to be careful that all I'm erasing is red lines, so if I select one and hit delete, I can delete them individually, and it makes it a little bit safer than trying to group select them. So we'll pick this one right here, hit delete, click it again, hit delete, click again, hit delete. So now the last thing that I have to put on here is going to be this, and I can do that simply by moving this from this center point straight up to this center point. Now I'm going to change my visual style back to conceptual by typing VS enter C enter, and now as I orbit this thing around, you can see that everything is spaced appropriately, all the pins go through the correct holes, and everything is set up correctly. The last thing that I want to do is I want to change this right here where it says unnamed to WCS, and then click home view. Okay, so we can see that this is showing me a top left and front. I want to actually orbit this around so that it's doing a southeast isometric style instead, which is where we see top, front, and right with the world coordinate system active. Now my picture looks just like the picture in the book, so I'm good to go to submit this assignment.